I wasn't saved until I was about 19 years old when I lost one of my best friends to camp. And that was the pivotal moment when I got my grades on my fitness. Because what happened is you lose somebody that you've been friends with since you were 5 to something that's terrible. And a lot of times people don't meet God until they hit like absolute rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I was at a point where I didn't want to have to reach rock bottom, but I wanted God to meet me where I was at and bring me back up. And that's exactly what happened for me. And from then on, I've been a believer and I've spoken about the gospel. And that's what I live for now, is to be able to share my story a little bit about faith.
This is the Fit Investor Podcast, where we talk about how to live a more holistic life of being fit, not only financially, but physically and faithfully. We'll be joined by experts in all these areas to share their experiences and actionable and practical tips so that you can be a fit investor too. So now let's join our hosts, Cale Delaney, Wesley Whitehead, and Brenna Carls.
Welcome to another episode of the Fit Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Cale, with the bearded man, Wesley Whitehead.
Yo.
And today we have a special guest who's going to teach us all about taxes and more. So he is Mr. Ryan Bakke. He's a pretty well-known guy in the short-term rental industry and the real estate industry. Definitely one of the most prominent CPAs and tax strategists in that arena. So he's a real estate focused CPA and real estate investing coach, specializing in short-term rentals. He also does speaking engagements where he's talked about tax strategy in front of over 1,100 people. He has a background in accounting and finance, takes health and fitness extremely important. Also a Christian, and he currently owns single-family homes, multifamily, STRs, glamping, RV parks, and other small businesses. And he's obviously very young if you see him here on the video podcast here. So Ryan, how the heck do you do all this and be young? What's going on, man?
How do I do everything? And so this is actually something I really want to get into the podcast on. And so what I want to say is I think a lot of people, they have their season where they're so focused at one thing, whether it's building the business or trying to scale their skills so they can make more income, that they forget about some of the other things that are important, like your family, your fitness, your faith. I remember like in college when I had a friend that passed away, and I made it my goal. I was like, hey, look, I'm gonna lose 30 pounds and I'm gonna get straight A's. That was my goal for my friend. And the semester went by and I got the straight A part, but I didn't lose the 30 pounds part. I was so focused on getting the straight A's that I didn't take the health and fitness seriously. I wasn't in the gym as much. I wasn't eating, dieting. And because I was so focused on the one thing. And then after that, I brought it back and I said, okay, look, let me actually really do this again. I'm going to get straight A's and I'm actually going to lose 30 pounds. And then I accomplished it that second semester. I think oftentimes people are so focused on one thing at one particular time. And what happens is there's a guy named Zig Ziglar, and he wrote a book called The Wheel of Life, which is 7 different areas where you should set goals in. And sometimes I forget them all, but it's fitness, family, spiritual goals, monetary goals. Did I say fitness already? There's 7 different areas where you should be setting goals in your life. And if you're so focused on one thing, what happens is one of those goals or one of those areas of your life starts to suffer. And so then your table, if you can imagine like a 7-pronged table or a 7-legged table, one of those legs snaps and your table starts to teeter. And so if you're not practicing time management, if you're not devoting time to faith, family, business, and fitness equally, one of those areas is going to suffer. And I've gotten to the point where I've tried to round that as much as I can so that one of those things doesn't suffer.
Yeah, that's a real good point because you do get singularly focused on something and you go all in. And then, you're absolutely, you end up neglecting other things. So that is a very good point. So how did you get into being an entrepreneur in the first place? It's not what society teaches you is the norm. Typical thing is you go to college, you get a job. What prompted you to choose a different path?
Yeah, I just saw that little old video of Steve Jobs where I think he's talking at a college, but he basically is saying in society, you're taught to stay in your lane, go to college, learn a specific skill, climb the corporate ladder, do that thing, and not really try to like butt heads with anybody or get out of the norm of what it is that you should be doing with your life. When you decide to go to college and pick a specialty, that's what you should be doing for the rest of your life. But then you realize that everything around the world is created and managed by people that are no smarter than you are. That's when you have that paradigm shift. I think I had the paradigm shift. I say a few things. So when I had just gotten out of college, I was already working at Deloitte. I got engaged. I found somebody who used to go to my school, alma mater, they call it. And he was billing $300 an hour for his financial planning. And I was like, man, how do I get to the point where I help people with finances and bill $300 an hour? And I go, how do you chart? Like, how do you get up to charging that? And he talked to me about the value proposition. If you say an hour of your time is worth X, if you can do something for cheaper than that, you probably should outsource that, whether grocery delivery, getting your lawn cut, lawn mowed, cleaning, sort of stuff. And talk about that value proposition to where it's not necessarily about how much it costs me to do something, but what is the value that the client or the business partner or whoever you're providing services or products for gets out of that. If I create a product, let's say I charge $1,000 for it, which I do for let's say my tax strategy course, but it's 3.5 hours of in-depth technical to where I've had people save anywhere from $100,000 by taking that course. So what is the value of that $1,000 course? I created it one time in one day. It took me 4 hours, but I can resell that thing over and over. And while I was kind of at Deloitte doing consulting, that's when I learned like this idea of value. And the best story about value proposition and understanding your time is the old like German folklore story where you had this machinery plant in the early 1920s and they were making widgets every single day. And they were making like $1 million a week just selling these widgets. All of a sudden their machine stopped. It clogged and it stopped working. And they called every single person they could, companies, contractors to come and fix this thing because they're losing $1 million a week. And this old German guy comes in and he's looking at the box for 30 minutes. And he taps on it with a screwdriver and he goes, drill a hole here. He draws a black X on the box. And so they bring in the guys that drill a hole there. And then as soon as they pull the thing out, the machine starts working again. And a week later, the company gets a bill and it's for $50,000. And the guy calls a German guy back and he goes, hey, look, dude, you're only here for 30 minutes. How are you going to charge us $50,000 for you're only here for 30 minutes? He goes, well, it's not about the amount of time that it took me to drill the hole. It was the amount of time that I spent learning and knowing my knowledge to know where to drill the hole value. And once you understand that you can create value, what happens is you have to learn how to scale that at no incremental cost to you. So there's basically 4 of these high value skills that Alex Hormozi, fitness guy entrepreneur, that talks about. You have to have the ability to multiply money. If I can take somebody's capital and multiply it and pay it back, that's high value skill number 1. Number 2, to be able to get people's attention, attract attention at no incremental cost to you. Number 3 is to be able to persuade and influence other people's behavior at no incremental cost to you. So if you could do all these things and label a value proposition on it and be able to scale that, no incremental cost to you, that's how you can become wealthy and really get your time back and get to the point where you're not charging hourly anymore, but you're charging based on the value that you provide.
Man, that's some knowledge there. Look at that. No, that's awesome. I'm just thinking what really hit home with me there was the talk of your metaphor there about the German folklore, even of how, it's not about the time that he spent there. It's about all the time that he put into it beforehand learning so that he knew what to do and that he could share that knowledge now, which that's incredibly valuable because someone like yourself who's doing coaching, or myself, that's something that I'm pursuing, putting together a coaching program as well. It is initially, at least for me in my mind, as I'm getting started with this, it's hard for me to put a value on that. And you want to even cheapen yourself because you're like, man, is it really worth this? Is it really worth that? But when you think about all the time that, you've spent and you've put in, all the mistakes and things that you've had to go through to learn that so you can teach somebody how to avoid those things, and how much time, money, effort, whatever, are they going to save? That is an immense value. So I like that.
And your
that's really
customers are not going to value something that you don't value yourself. If you try to undercut, like you said, the time and effort you've put into learning that skill, like that machinist or whoever he was, not only did he need to charge for the time that it took for him to learn what he learned to be able to identify the problem, but if I was that company making $1 million a week selling widgets,
That's the
I
other
cut a
thing
check
too.
in 5 seconds, feeling like it's $1 million that I would have lost. The opportunity cost is huge. 150 grand is nothing in that sense. Yeah, that's good. You sound like you've been very successful from the outset. What have been some of the challenges you faced coming out of college, going into consulting, things like that?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge is there's a blessing and a curse to building a personal brand. So when I started it, it was Ryan from Learn Like a CPA. So Learn Like a CPA was just a tag that I started when I was really early on. This is teaching people personal finance, how to budget, how to save 25% of your income so you can build wealth for you and your family, and kind of grew into more of a real estate focused niche. Now we're at the point I think I have about 15,000 followers on Instagram, around the same on TikTok. I've got a Facebook group of over 5,000 people in there learning tax strategies. And the problem with the social brand is it's a blessing and a curse because people come to me for my brand. They don't know what my accounting firm's name is. They have no clue with that. They just know it's for me, which is a good thing because it puts me on another pedestal than other people. The problem is it gets harder to delegate task and authority to other people. I have to basically bring those people up and put them on the same pedestal as me, to where if Kale comes in and says he wants to talk to Ryan, I'd say, hey, look, you should really go talk to my other CPA, Liz, because she really doesn't day in, day out. She probably knows stuff better than I do. And how that works in business is basically, I learned this from a competitor CPA, and I didn't steal it from him because he taught me it, but you basically have to essentially he calls it Drake feature somebody else. Drake is a famous rapper. Whenever he features on somebody's song, that rapper blows up. And so what I'm working on now is I need to figure out who's the person or team that I want to Drake feature, so that way I can step back. The perfect example of this is Avery Carl. She goes, oh, I'm Avery Carl from the Short Term Shop. I'm Avery Carl and so she puts that business on another pedestal than herself. And that's how she's able to scale it. When we chatted offline, but when Wesley was talking about these businesses, it's make, manage, and scale. How do you make it? How do you manage it? And then how do you scale those processes within the business? Like you said, in the other business, make, manage, and scale. And it's hard to do that when you build that personal brand because people want to talk to you. They don't want to talk to somebody else that's working for you. So that's by far, I think it's been my biggest challenge. Another thing is Alex Hormozy. He also talks about this concept called the lady in the red dress. And no, it's not referring to women, although it's a problem sometimes, but it's this idea of this distraction to what you're doing. So for example, like I'm focused on tax strategy. I'm focused on helping people save tens of thousands of dollars per year on taxes. But I also grew this passion for real estate coaching and actually helping people like scale and build their portfolios and their businesses. But do I help people in that real estate niche and then I have to compete against the Rachel Gainsbourgs, the Bill Fays, the Michael Strogans, everybody of the world? Or do I just stay in my own little tax niche where I'm on a pedestal of my own that nobody else is there? It's because that real estate code or that other opportunity could be some quick tax and it could be a good way to make some money. But if it's not aligned with like your long-term goal of what you want, it could be a distraction. It could actually set you back a little bit.
I think you've made some, and I don't obviously know all the internal structuring and everything, but it seems like you've been making some good alignments or partnerships. You're working with Bill Faith, obviously, with this STR super team and part of his conferences and all that stuff. So it sounds like you're, at least from the outside looking in, it sounds like finding a way to do both. You're still staying in your lane or your niche of the STR specific tax strategist who's, when people think of that, they think of Ryan Bakke, which you've done a great job of setting yourself up like that. But at the same time, you're aligning these other well-known and influential people in the real estate specific space. You're getting your status in that arena as well, even though you may not be Drake, you're getting Drake featured in a sense. Right. So to me, it sounds like you're doing a pretty good job of getting both those arenas. Again, I don't know all the details and specifics of things, but that's just how I see it from the outside looking in, which I think is excellent. You've done a really good job. And it's been a very short period of time, frankly, that you've become that top of mind figure in those arenas. So like, how did you, I'm assuming that was very intentional. So like, how did you really focus on building that? What were some of the key things that you did
Yeah.
to be able to do that?
I was doing all the things without really knowing that I was doing the things. And this is something that I teach, and I teach other people that I look at them and I'm like, okay, was exactly me like a year and a half ago. Let me help this person and let me help them be more intentional with what they're doing. So I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. In order to build a good brand, there's 3 key elements that I talk about. So number 1 is you have to become the person of interest in what you're doing. So, that the way you do that is you start posting content. Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm a real estate CPA. Here I'm at my house hack, my duplex here on my investment properties, or I'm at my short-term rental that I got in Ohio, or my campground. You become the person of interest by posting. But you also become the person of interest by commenting. And so when I first started off, I literally would set a timer on my phone for 20 minutes every single day. And I would just scroll through these Facebook groups and I would just respond to people's questions. And so if somebody would have, oh, should I take out money out of my 401k to buy my first investment property? Should I do this? Should I do that? I would just respond and I would just give value. And I would never say, oh, if you have any other questions, call me, or here's my link to my website. I would literally just give the value, become the person of interest. That way, whenever somebody thinks about tax and real estate, my name pops up. And so you guys can do the same thing. Wesley, like if somebody thinks about the dog for your business, your name needs to pop in their head. That's the guy that talks about that. He's the person of interest in that field. That's step number 1, or pillar number 1, I would say. Step number 2, or pillar number 2, is give that the law of reciprocity. And the law of reciprocity basically says, if you give value without ever expecting anything in return, it'll come back to you. People are more likely to buy a product or a service from you if they felt like you helped them out already. I'll give you a story. You guys got Olive Garden by you? So at Olive Garden, what do they do when they bring you the bill?
I don't know. It's been a long time since I've been there.
What do they give you with the bill?
Oh, the mints.
The mint. Everybody knows the mint. Okay. So they did a study. So they had 3 different waitresses. Waitress number 1 brought them the bill with the mint and said, thanks for coming in today. Have a safe trip home, whatever. Waitress number 2 came in, brought the bill, gave them 2 mints and said, have a nice trip. Please come back soon. Waitress number 1 got, let's just 10% tip. Waitress number 2 on average got 12% tip. People were like, oh, she gave us 2 mints instead of 1 per each. Nice. Whatever. But the waitress that made the most in tips was a waitress that came to the table, left a mint, went to the kitchen and came back and brought more mints to the party before they were signing the bill. And what that did to the people at the table was, hey, she went out of her way to provide more value to us. And that third waitress got the most in tips out of all 3 waitresses, simply by just the illusion and the lure of she provided value without ever asking for anything else in return. She just happened to brought the mints before they signed the bill. So step number 1, become the person of interest. Pillar number 2 is the law of reciprocity. And then number 3 is going to be what's called the transfer of authority. And this one's arguably the most important. Transfer of authority, the way you think of that is, it's just like a referral, except it's the way that you do the referral. So it'd be like Kale comes to me and he says, hey, I have this question. I have these LLCs. I have this business set up here. I want to learn a little bit more about taxes. And I say, okay, I can explain that. But when you're talking about business structure and legal, you really need to go talk to this attorney because he's the expert in that field. It's the same way as when a realtor comes to you and they say, I want to identify this property. I want a property in this area. And I'm really interested to know what it's going to do from a tax perspective. The realtor is going to say, you really need to go talk to Ryan Bakke because he can actually explain that a lot better than I can. And so what that means is now, let's use Bill for an example, like Bill Fate. When somebody goes to Bill for a tax or financial question, he'll say, this is what I know based on my experience, a real coach, investor for however long. But you really need to go talk to Ryan because he's an expert in that field. And the way that works is I don't need to be vetted as much because I've already been vetted through Bill. So Bill's already sponsored me in a sense, like Drake feature, whatever you want to call it. He's already stamped the seal of approval on me. So then my process becomes a lot easier because the systems that I need, it's already easier to convert or close that person into becoming a client because I've already got the transfer authority from people in the space. And at the conference, Michael Shogun said, a rising tide raises all ships. Right? So you can align yourself with people that are similar in your industry. If you're a realtor, align yourself with a lender. If you're a lender, align yourself with people who are fix and flipping and wholesaling or whatever it is. And start transferring your authority to those people. So you need to learn how to transfer authority and reciprocate authority equally. So if people are coming to me with tax questions, but I think it's more of a legal thing or a lending question, I'm saying, hey, look, you really ain't gonna talk to this lender because they're going to be able to answer that a little bit better than you. So we'll run through the three. Person of interest, number one. Law of reciprocity, number two, give more than you take. And number three, the transfer of authority. You have to learn to transfer and reciprocate authority in your space.
Man,
Three pillars of building personal.
golden nuggets. Golden nuggets. I love this. This is all awesome information here. And we haven't even touched on taxes yet. Man.
Oh, man. Or fitness.
Let's hit a few things on taxes too, but before we go in, because especially for the bearded man sitting here, because I want to help him out with his tax bill. And I know we talk, and especially your niche is the real estate, but for people in other businesses, do you have any just like general tax or common strategies that people can use outside of the real estate world?
Yeah. Shifting your income from earned or business income to passive or what's called portfolio income. So when I explain it, I draw like a T chart, but then I put another box at the bottom, because a lot of people, and you might have seen like Robert Kiyosaki draw the little employee, self-employed, business owner, and then CEO or shareholder or whatever it was. It's the same thing as that, except a lot of us spend our time in that employee or that self-employed or that business owner mindset, and not enough time in the investor or the passive activity person. And so simply just taking your earned income and moving it to vehicles that are taxed a lot less than your day job or your business is going to save you in taxes. So whether that's buying rental properties, is of course what we like, stocks and bonds, or other businesses that you are not actually involved in are going to be taxed a lot less than businesses that you're actively activated.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So like we're just saying, so in my case, it would be take the income from the pet boarding business that I have and put that in a business that I'm not involved in at all, that I just own, and then classify that as passive income.
Exactly. Yeah. So the way, when you're a business owner and you're actively involved in the business, you're subject to Social Security Medicare tax, which is typically 7.65% as an employee. But if you're a business owner, you're actually 15% because you're the employee and the owner of your business. Simply shifting, let's say you got 100K of income coming in, simply shifting that over to a business in which you don't own, which you own, but you're not actively involved in, a laundromat, a hair salon are examples. That income stream becomes passive to me, which is I pay less in taxes, but more so because it's passive income to me, I have the ability to offset it with other passive losses. So I'm able to take losses from my rental properties. Again, losses, they're not cash flow losses, but they're losses I get to tell the government that I have. Yeah, paper losses. And I can use those losses from the rental properties to offset other business income. So the way you structure your businesses, if you can, is be as passive as possible. So it's classified as passive income, and then use your rental property losses to offset the business stream. This is why they say that Warren Buffett pays less in taxes than his secretary. It's not that he truly does pay less in taxes because he employs hundreds of people, but his effective tax rate, the amount of tax that he pays on each dollar that he makes, is less than his secretary's, because all his income streams are just passive or portfolio, and he's just using losses to offset those.
Yeah. And that's, I know taxes can be painted as such a bland or a boring subject, but I think once you start digging in and looking at it from these perspectives, being a business owner or an investor, it actually, to me at least, it's pretty darn interesting and exciting. Like, I'm sure you're familiar with Tom Wheelwright, or Robert Kiyosaki's tax strategist, but I love what he says is that the tax code is not about penalties, it's about incentives. So it's not about, most people think about that taxes are a penalty. Oh man, it sucks. I got to pay taxes. Well, in reality, the tax code is telling you what the government wants you to do, because all the incentives that they offer, that's what they're pushing. Like we're chatting offline about the electric cars and stuff like that. And one of the main reasons I bought an electric car was because of the tax credit, because the government's offering tax credits because they want to push this whole green agenda, which, okay, great. I'll take advantage of it while I can.
Play ball.
Yeah. That's the way I look at it when I think about taxes now. It's okay. What does the government want me to do? What are they offering incentives for where I can put my money to work that's going to give me the best benefits to keep more of my money? And kind of along that lines, one thing I get asked a lot, and I think about it a little bit too, is in the real estate world, obviously cost segregation is a bonus depreciation. That's like the main thing that we talk about a lot because it offers one of the biggest benefits typically for real estate investors. But as the bonus depreciation allowance is being phased out over these next few years, and or let's say an investor that maybe they're not looking to like purchase properties as aggressively, so they're not going to have those properties to do cost segment or get bonus depreciation on. Once that kind of runs out or phases out, where do you turn? Like, what are some of the things that you can really start thinking about as alternates for maximizing tax benefits? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll say two things. I wanted to touch on the tax code part. When you see who writes the tax code, which is like Congress, our elected officials in every state, Congress is made up of who? Business owners, investors, and real estate owners. It makes it very like, no wonder they write the tax code to incentivize those specific behaviors, is because they're all owners in these different types of activities. That question, I get asked that a few times. I think what will become a little bit more popular is the self-directed IRAs. So let's just assume bonus depreciation starts to phase out, and then ultimately by the end of 2025, it becomes zero. You're still going to have people that buy real estate, of course, because of the cash flow and the tax benefits there are going to decrease substantially. I think self-directed IRAs become a lot more powerful because you're going to be able to either tax deferred or tax free build your wealth. I tell a story all the time because it's true. And I played golf with a guy who he had about 300 grand in a Roth IRA, and he was a land surveyor for his 9 to 5. So he spent like 30 years just surveying, plotting land and stuff. And so he bought a chunk of land for 300 grand in his Roth IRA. And then ended up being bought out by when the Rams came to build SoFi, and I think Los Angeles, like Irvine, Los Angeles or whatever. He turned his self-directed Roth IRA from $300K to $5 million just because he bought land in the area and knew what to do. I think self-directing self-directing your IRA or retirement becomes more popular because that's a way to either build your wealth tax deferred or tax free. I think another thing that what a lot of people have to understand, and I tweeted this yesterday because I've finally had this like self-realization, is if you want to become extremely wealthy, you have to understand 3 different things. Number 1 is debt. Number 2 is inflation. And number 3 is taxes. And because I get asked that all the time, hey, what happens when I run out of tax benefits? Or what happens when I have to sell? What happens when I have to sell and I have to pay the depreciation back? Debt, inflation, and tax benefits. So I can borrow money. I can borrow money year one at, let's say, 5% interest rate. So now I have a capital asset that's appreciating, providing me cash flow, tax benefits year one. As the time goes on, inflation's eating into that 5% debt. So I'm paying debt payments at 5% when inflation's running at 7 or 8. That's just what it's telling us, but we all know it's probably a little bit higher than that recently. Number 1 is debt. I'm borrowing this money to buy assets and businesses. When I go to pay it back, it's worth 100 grand that I borrowed in year 1 is not the same when I go to pay 100 grand back in year 5. I mean, sure, I'm paying interest on it, but still, it's not the same. It's taking advantage of time value of money. If I could borrow 100 grand in year 1 and I pay it back in year 5, it's not worth the same in year 5. So I use that 100 grand to go scale and buy more assets. The next step, covered on inflation there too. Because if I could borrow money at X% and then pay it, even if I have to, and this is why I don't typically recommend like floating rates or ARMs or variable products. I recommend a straight mortgage, but debt, inflation, and then taxes. Your tax bracket, if you're a business owner, you're in a high W-2, let's just say you're in a really high tax bracket. Number 1, let's just assume that your tax bracket in year 1 is the same in year 5 or year 10. So you bought a short-term rental year 1, tons of depreciation against your W-2. And let's say you're able to save $50,000 in taxes in year 1. Even if in year 5 or year 10, you have to pay that same 50 grand back, as long as you took that 50 grand and you didn't go blow it on like a car or you put that into more businesses and real estate, you're going to have way more than 50 grand in year 5 and year 10 to pay that 50 grand back. This is assuming you're equal. This is assuming you're like 35% tax bracket on a year 1 and 35% tax bracket year 10. So you're paying that same 50 grand back, but what happens? Inflation. So the 50 grand that you are paying back to the government, if you do stop paying the government, is not worth the same as the 50 grand that you borrowed in year 1. Debt, inflation, and taxes. But the taxes part is also important too, because what we see a lot in real estate is people are working, let's say you have a high earning 2 W-2 income household. They're in a 35% tax bracket. And then they're buying enough properties and offset their income and rolling that into where one of them can quit their day job. So what happens? Their tax bracket drops. So now they go from a 35% tax bracket to maybe a 22 or 24. And so if you're paying, let's say you get tax benefits at 35, and in year 5, you have to pay it back at 22 or 24. Number one, you just got 11% spread on the government there because you got benefits at 35 and you paid it back at 22, let's just say. So you got 13% spread. But inflation. So when you go to pay that money back in year 5, again, it's not worth the same as year 1. Does that explain a little bit better?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. The time value of money. That's why debt is such a wonderful thing when used correctly. I'm a big follower of Robert Kiyosaki. And of course, that's what he preaches. Use debt, use the debt. Obviously, consumer debt is a whole, consumer debt is a whole another thing. That's the wrong kind of debt. But yeah, use debt to buy cash flowing assets. Like that's the core of his teaching and how he's built his wealth. And that's basically what you're saying. Use debt to buy cash flowing assets. And the additional benefit during that is inflation is helping you out in a sense, because you've got that long-term fixed debt at one rate and you're paying it back
It goes back
later on.
saying about who writes the tax code. And it explains why this inflation and debt cycle is always built into the cake, because the ones who are benefiting from it are the ones writing all the regulations and managing the money supply. So basically what you're saying is if you don't change your thinking to match those who are writing these policies and codes, then you're always going to be in behind. Always be.
That's it.
You can't beat them, join them.
Yeah. That's it. That's a beautiful way to sum it up.
So inflation and taxes.
Yeah. I would love to go on with this for forever here because there's so much. I love talking about this stuff, but we got to jump into the other things. So let's get on to the next segment here. Let's talk about fitness. Now, when we were at the conference, you only ranked me as number 5 best triceps.
I put top 5, no order.
Okay. Then you bumped me up to number 3. So I felt a little better, but still. So let's talk about it, man. I don't know what you're sipping there, but is that a protein shake or some BCAA?
This is just water.
Just some good old water.
All right. Yeah, man. I mean, what do you want to know? What's this routine?
Yeah. Like what for you, what's your fitness of choice?
Yeah. Resistance training, weightlifting. And because I've studied, I've listened to hundreds of hours of podcasts. If I had to rank it, man, it's probably like family, real estate, or God, family, real estate. And out of order. But remember, you got to keep them all equal. So my first tackle at fitness was, it was when I wanted to lose 30 pounds. When I was telling you about when I was in college, I think I was 19. I think I was maybe 20 years old at that time. So I lost the 30 pounds, but here's what happened. I did it the wrong way. So I cut my count. Let's say, for those who don't understand, so there's a caloric maintenance. How many calories you can per day without gaining weight or losing. It's just like you stay the same. That's it. And let's just say my caloric maintenance is 3,000. And you can figure this out. You just go online, look at a calculator. I like to take an average of 3 or 5 calculators just so it mellows out. But let's say my caloric maintenance is 3,000. If you want to lose weight, you have to either burn calories or just eat less. You either move more or eat less. That's the only way you burn. That's the only way you lose. And it's energy, it's synthesis, it's everything. If I want to lose a pound of fat per week, I need to be at 2,500 calories. Because if it's a pound of fat, is 3,500 calories. A pound is 3,500 calories of energy. So if I want to lose a pound of fat, I need to eat at, let's just say 2,500. So if I do that, I'll lose a pound of fat per week. And so if I can do that for, let's say 30 weeks, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. But the thing is, with that, what happens is the longer you eat at the 2,500, your metabolism drops down to that rate. So now your caloric maintenance becomes 26 or 27. And so if you want to continue that path of weight loss or whatever it is your goal is, now you have to drop your calories even further or do more cardio. So you get into this cycle, and because I was only like maybe on the weights like 2 or 3 times a week, but I was doing a lot of boxing and I was doing like running and I was doing jogging and stuff, basically just cardio, because again, you have to eat less or do more cardio. And then I essentially dropped my metabolism so low that it was like, yeah, I lost the 30 pounds, but I also lost, I don't think I lost muscle, but the muscle to fat ratio there. And this is something to understand too, is if I'm 200 pounds and I lose 20 pounds on the scale, whoop-de-doo. But if I lost 10 pounds, let's say I'm 20% body fat. So of the 200 pounds, I'm 40 pounds of fat 160 pounds of muscle. If I lose 10 pounds of muscle and 10 pounds of fat, sure, the scale went down 20, but my body fat percentage actually went up. It actually went up. And I have friends that own gyms and they run these New Year challenges where, whoever can lose the most weight the first 3 months of the year gets their money back or something. And all those people, their body fat percentage goes up. Turn the scale goes down 13% or 13 pounds, 14 pounds. Their body fat percentage goes up. And so if you really want to sustain like long-term health and fitness goals, you have to understand caloric maintenance and you have to try to boost and build your metabolism, fire your metabolism up where you can eat more food without it adding on weight to you. So that's like my knowledge there in fitness. As far as the routine goes, like I said, I've been running weights. I would say at least 4 times a week. I'll do probably 45 minutes of just weight training. So some things that I really like to do. I love incline dumbbell bench. Close grip bench was like firing my triceps up. I've been doing this new one the last couple of months called the JM press, where you go into a flat Smith machine, you hold like a false neutral grip, and I could put 200 pounds on my triceps doing that. There's no other lift that you can get that much weight on triceps other than what's called the JM press. You guys see guys in the gym do skull crushers and stuff, but I think the skull crushers, the reason why I don't like the skull crushers, it can really hurt your elbow if you're doing it the wrong way. Why I don't like the close grip bench as much because if you have long arms, your shoulders can only go back so far. So this JM press that I'm telling you, so if you go on the Smith and lay flat on the Smith, nobody likes the guy that mentioned out of Smith. But yeah, if you hold that false grip and you do this JM press, man, dude, I saw my tricep blow the hell up. And it's a lot safer on your elbows and it's a lot safer on your shoulders.
I'm going to try that.
Recently, I'm trying to shift my routine into a little bit more of body weight stuff. Like I want to master my body weight. So I could do maybe 50 push-ups without stopping, 60, but I can only do 6 pull-ups without stopping. And that's a far stretch from when I started where I couldn't even do 1 pull-up. And I couldn't even do 10 push-ups without getting out of breath when I first started my fitness journey. But now I just feel a lot more savvy about it. And I think I'm hanging around like 16.5% body fat. And ideally, I'd like to be in like 13 to 12 to 15 range would be like a good spot for me. But I know what I need to do is, do I want to make that commitment to like diet or eat my macros in? That's a whole other conversation. But that's my fitness. Let me go ahead and shoot questions at me if you have them. But
yeah, I just want to touch back to what you were talking about in terms of the metabolism and everything. That's one of the reasons that I love weight training as well over cardio or anything else, is that weight training actually raises your resting metabolic rate. Over time, the lifting weights is going to change your metabolic rate so that even at rest, you're still burning more calories than if you didn't. To me, that's one of the huge benefits of weightlifting, among other things. Now, for me, like I've been lifting weights since I was 14. So it's been 25 years now with almost no stops or anything in between. I go through different phases of sometimes I'm pushing it really hard. Sometimes I'm in maintenance mode, whatever. Like for the past several years, I've been in maintenance mode.
Yeah.
I had too many other things.
I could tell. Dude, I could see your traps through the freaking screen, man.
There we go. Thank you. But yeah, I just had so much going on. At that time, I was still in the W-2, the business, the kids, all this stuff. And it wasn't my main focus. Now I'm starting to put a little bit of a renewed effort into focusing a little bit more on the fitness. And so I've expanded my workouts, in maintenance mode. So as I call it, I was doing basically like 4 different exercises a day on top of my warm-ups and that type of stuff. Now I'm doing six exercises, each with 3 sets and whatever. It's bumped up my workout by basically 50%. Plus now I'm going 6 days a week versus the 5 days a week. So I'm getting into that. I'm changing things up a bit. I'm doing some heavier exercises on some things. I'm trying out some of these other methods. Like I know I posted about the time under tension and some of these other things. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. And one of the other big benefits of exercise, not just weightlifting, but exercise in general, that we talk about is stress. Because anybody has stress. Everybody has stress. But especially if you're in a demanding W-2 job or you're an entrepreneur and you've got all these things going on, those stress levels can get through the roof. Add that on top of what you've got going at your home with family and all these other things. For me, frankly, exercising and weightlifting has probably been the main thing that's kept me sane. There were some periods in my life that were just extremely stressful. And I'd seen peers get into these panic attacks where they're actually in the hospital and all these things. And I'm like, man, like these people just start doing something, man, get an outlet for that stress. Because that's what it is for me. On top of the physical aspects, it's the mental benefits of it too. I mean, that time in the gym is time that is quiet, whether you're listening to music, whatnot, you're focused on that. You're not looking at your phone. You're not thinking about what you got to do. And that's why I do it in the morning to be able to focus on things a little bit better as well. But it's about having that physical outlet is also a mental outlet for that stress, which I think is huge. So I don't know what you think about that, if that's how it is for you or what.
Yeah, so truthful to that. It's a way to de-stress. Like you said, it's an outlet too. It's a great place to see the improvement, because if you're not ready, the weights aren't moving. You might go to curl that 50-pound dumbbell and it's not moving. Like, it's not going to lie to you. The weights will never lie to you. People won't lie to you. Things will happen, but the weights are not lying. If you can't lift that, you're not moving it. And I think it shows, hey, if you can have a really like transformative process in the gym, what else can you accomplish? What other goals can you achieve? And I had somebody athlete the other day, they were trying to lose like weight. No. So, well, when you say lose weight, we're talking losing fat. Because whenever people say they want to lose weight, they want to lose fat. They don't want to lose muscle. The problem is people that don't do the routine, have that mapped out, they end up losing muscle in the process. Like I said, whenever you're in a loss stage, if I had some tips, I would say is to learn. One of the biggest things is like learning your cues. I was never like the biggest person on intermittent fasting, but like I've been doing it, I would say the last 6 months, where I don't eat anything before noon. And check with this because it can do all sorts of things to like your hormones, especially for a woman, like the body just acts differently. So double check before you do this. But like for me, I haven't been eating until noon for the last couple of months. And it was crazy because when we were in Nashville, I actually got invited to breakfast and I had an omelet, or whatever, but it was like 9:30, 10 in the morning. And dude, I felt so bad. I was like to the point where it's like I was going to throw that thing up. And I think it's just my body adapting to that. One of the benefits of intermittent fasting is you're just closing the window when you have time. Again, it's just calories in, calories out. It doesn't matter if you eat before 10 or after 10 or noon or whatever. If you cannot eat under your caloric maintenance every single day, you will not lose, period. Some other tips is to find some foods and beverages that are like appetite suppressants. So just black coffee is a great one. Coffee is like no calories, black. Don't pump it with like syrup and all this like vanilla that a lot of people put it in there, because then you got like a 600 calorie frappe from Starbucks. I see people do that all the time. Coffee is a good appetite suppressant. Coffee has a half-life of about 8 hours though, which basically means if you take it after caffeine in general has a half-life of 8 hours. So if you take it at 4 p.m., you're not going to burn that off until midnight. So good luck trying to sleep at 9 or 10 o'clock. I typically try not to drink coffee later than 11 or 12. I'm on my cup and it's 10:30 here, so I'm all right. Coffee is a great one. Protein by far is a good. Whenever I eat dinner now or when I eat food, I always go to the protein first, because if you can knock the protein, that's like it's the hardest to digest, most filling. And so it'll make you eat less of like the starch, all the carbs and the fats and stuff. Other good ones, like I said, coffee, get your protein in. I think a lot of people try sparkling water. I would say water in general. Water in general is good because brain signal that our brain sends when we're hungry and we're thirsty is the same exact signal. So a lot of times people think they're hungry when it's actually they're thirsty, because it's the same signal that goes to our brain and our mind. So whenever somebody's hungry, I always just I didn't have water. I was just chug a water. I'm still after that. All right, I'm hungry. Sparkling water is good. I like diet ginger beer is good. Just sparkly stuff that has no calories that will cure like your hunger feeling. Just make sure you get your protein in. So you don't want to have anywhere between 0.8 to 1 grams of protein per pound lean body mass. Lean body mass is whatever you want to be. I'm 205. I really want to be about 195 or 200. So I need to eat about 200 grams of whatever my lean body mass is in protein.
I like how you're very data backed and everything.
Not
just that's true. Yeah, not just in the business and everything, but your fitness and everything. It's great. I didn't know a lot of these figures. I've been doing this fitness stuff for a long time, but yeah, like I said, I don't get as into the nitty gritty as that. Like I'm an old school, keep it simple type of person, and like when somebody says they want to lose weight, for me, my first thing is And again, I keep harping on lifting weights because I love it. But my first thing is lift weights, because like we talked about before, that's going to increase your resting metabolic rate. So you're going to burn more. Plus, you're going to be doing something now. You're going to be exercising. You're going to be burning that fat. So if you want to get fit, and even when people say they want to lose weight, frankly, I don't think it's really that they want to lose weight because of a specific number. They want to look better.
Body recount.
Frankly, the actual weight number doesn't matter. It's how you want your body to look. And when you're lifting weights, it's one of the best things to get your body to look better. Even if you gain weight, which can be common when you're lifting weight, if you're doing it, well enough and eating well enough where your muscle's going to start replacing that fat. Muscle weighs more than fat. So you might gain weight, but your body's probably going to be looking a lot better too, which was really the goal that you were looking for, not to just reduce the number on the scale. So that's kind of the thing that I always default to. And then when it comes to dieting and things like that, I've never been a proponent of dieting. I think that's just ridiculous stuff. It's propaganda. It's doomed for failure. Why set yourself up on this short-term goal that is unsustainable for the long term? You're really setting yourself up for failure. So I always think just do things in moderation, like to be at top fitness level. That's going to be your job. If you're a bodybuilder, okay, you can get down into that nitty gritty. You can eat exactly the calories, the breakdown, the macros, all that stuff. But if you're an everyday person where you've got a family, you've got a job, you got a business, like good luck. Do things in moderation. Don't be going to McDonald's or Burger King. Just be conscious of what you eat and what you drink. Sugar is one of my things. Like I hate sugar. Like I can't stand it myself. Like I don't have the sweet tooth, thank God. But I despise the sugar industry because it causes so many problems, which we don't have time to get into. But like, that's one of the big things. Stay away from these sugary products, these sodas. These sugar is pumped into so many things, and it's the cause of so much of the obesity, not only in the US, but around the world. And if you can just do simple things like that, those alone are going to have so many benefits to you physically. And you don't need to get down to these exact things or be in the gym every single day for 3 hours a day on all this stuff. Fitness is really simple. It's really simple, and nutrition, it's hard. And just like anything, people avoid what's hard. It's kind of built into us naturally. You got to put in the work. You got to have that discipline, because that's the other thing it does is it builds discipline, which factors into all these different aspects of your life. It builds this discipline. It builds this consistency. And over time, you're going to get the results that you want. And so that's what I always preach. Just keep it simple. You don't have to be on a strict diet. You don't have to be killing yourself in the gym if you don't want to, but eat well, do some types of activity every single day. And that's going to do wonders for your health, physically, mentally, etc. So that's my philosophy on things.
Speaking of Kale's preaching sermon, let's move on to the faith section. Y'all could do this for hours.
Cut me off. I know. Jeez.
Let's talk a little about your faith. You said earlier that you were a believer. That's excellent. So when did faith become personal to you? Were you raised in the church? Was there a time in your life when you didn't know Christ? Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I wasn't. So my family we were Creasters. We call them Creasters. It's like you only go to church on Christmas and Easter.
Nice. Creasters.
So I was at public school my whole life. We didn't go to like private school or any no routine church at all. I wasn't saved until I was about 18 or 19 years old when I lost one of my best friends to camp. And that was the pivotal moment I was telling you earlier about when I got my grades, got my fitness. Because what happened is you lose somebody that you've been friends with since you were 5 and to something that's terrible. And a lot of times people don't meet God until they hit like absolute rock bottom. And I was at a point where it was like, I didn't want to have to reach rock bottom, but I wanted God to meet me where I was at and bring me up. And that's exactly what happened for me. So I was able to tap into the fitness and get around good church and good people. The school that I went to was actually a Christian college. When I signed up for it, I didn't really go there for that part of it. I went there because they had a volleyball team, which is the sport that I played in college. And then they had a good account in the business program. But I didn't go there because it was necessarily a Christian school. But I wasn't saved. It just so happened I don't think I was saved until I was 19 years old. And from then on, I've been a believer, and I've spoken about the gospel. Money is mentioned in the Bible thousands of times. And that's what I live for now, is to be able to share my story a little bit about faith. Because what's interesting is, especially in corporate, you're not supposed to really talk about religion. It's kind of like one of those things you just leave at the door when you walk in. But when you study it, it's not like I have this Christian little ball cap that I take off when I walk into the corporate. That thing stays on. And so you can see these people, and it's crazy because somebody at my company is, I can tell you're a believer. I was like, what? I've never mentioned it before. So you just walk a certain way, you talk a certain way, like that prowess, people can see that. And it's a disservice if you're working at W2 or if you're working at a place where it's not an open concept. One of the things that, unfortunately, I think is leading towards where society is at today with mental health, and hear all the time about shootings, hear all the time about pressure rates, stuff. I think a lot of it, quite frankly, they took down out of schools.
100%.
Took out of schools, and just to be able to tap into and bring that perspective back, because I think the crime rates out of any sort of juveniles or early 20s, whatever, it's single parent homes and it's communities that are not faith based. Those are the two biggest demographics of things where things go wrong. The thing is, talent is equally dispersed across America, but talent is dispersed everywhere, but some people don't have the same opportunities as other people, but talent's there. It's just that you may not grow up in the environment. That's why they say it takes a village. It takes a village. And I just think we need to bring more of that back into society today.
Something you mentioned earlier about the people in the marketplace knowing you're a Christian. It's funny how they say, supposed to leave religion at the door, but they really mean Christianity, because all other religions, including atheism,
are welcome. Right.
Secularism, they're all welcome. But the
Not
one
only welcome, but protected.
Protected, exactly. And one thing I always like to think of is are there people in my life who I interact with on a regular basis that if I was accused of being a Christian, would they have enough evidence to convict me? If people I interact with on a regular basis wouldn't be able to be used to convict me of Christianity, then I'm not doing something. If you pass somebody once, no big deal. You're not going to know. But if you interact with them on a regular basis, there should be enough fruit in your life where you're different. It's a great testimony to hear about your personal success. And when people find out that, oh, wait, you're successful in all these areas and you're a believer and you believe in Christ, that's a great testimony. The Bible says that not many believers are wealthy, successful, high and mighty, but there were some, and there always will be. But unfortunately, people tend to view faith as a crutch, and they think that faith hinders success. Or if you claim to have faith and you're successful, you're really just thanking some sky god, just kind of like a lucky charm. But being a genuine believer and exercising that's good. Something else you mentioned real quick, you mentioned about a church. So how important do you think local gatherings of like-minded believers, how important is that to you, and how important is that, do you think, towards success in someone's personal faith?
Yeah. That's the most interesting part about all this, is that the Bible doesn't say you have to go to church. This is something that, so I was the team captain of the volleyball team, and we always opened up practice with prayer, ended with prayer, games with prayer, huddle around and say prayer before the game. The Bible says, where two or more are gathered in my name, I will be there with them. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be in a church setting. It could be in a small family setting. It could be on a volleyball court. And the fact that us three are talking about it right now means God's with us. Where two or more are gathered in my name, I will be there with them. And the church is definitely the big thing that everybody knows. And it's, hey, you go to church on Sunday, you follow it up with breakfast afterwards or lunch afterwards or whatever. That's super important, but that is a reason sometimes, especially if people are hourly W-2 workers still, or they're working, like my fiance, for example, she's a nurse. She works weekends sometimes. Hey, I can't go to church because I have to work. The Bible says you don't necessarily have to go to church. And I think that's important too.
I think you're hitting a good point there. I would say that where two or more are gathered, Christ is in their midst 100%. But the Bible also says, don't neglect the gathering of the saints. Paul says that in the epistles. And to your point, it doesn't have to be on a Sunday morning. Right. The Bible doesn't say Sunday morning. Sunday morning was just so happened to be when they gathered in the first few centuries to commemorate the resurrection, as opposed to the Sabbath, which is Saturday. But yeah, I agree. You can have basically church pretty much anywhere as long as you're intentional about it. gathering with like-minded believers is a great way to edify one another, to hold each other accountable, to push. Just like you've got your Facebook groups for your business and for your fitness groups, there has to be intentional gathering of like-minded believers because we all stumble. And even the three of us now, this is encouraging. So that's a good point.
Yeah. And just it's like you said, with anything, the people you surround yourself is going to influence who you become and who you are. That's going to influence what you focus on and all that. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Yeah. If you're gathering with Christians and godly people, chances are it's going to boost you up in your spiritual journey versus not. So yeah, it's definitely critical in every aspect of your life to focus on those things. How would you say that your faith influences your business? Do you have any, whether it's from financial aspect or just how you run your business, or do you have any
decision making,
like that?
things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think every one of us has certain talents and abilities. There's a difference between being gifted and having skills. LeBron James is 6'8" and he can run like a gazelle. That's a gift. But the skills is, hey, he's the first guy in the door and he's the last guy out of every single practice. So the difference between gifts and skills. But for me, I understood that I could take the gifts that I have, which to me, from a business perspective, is to be able to take these things that are extremely complex, taxes, real estate, all these things, and bring them down to something that everybody can understand. Put it in a format where you can listen to a 15-minute podcast of mine, you can listen to me speak or listen to a video. My gift is taking things that are extremely complex and boiling them down to something that everybody can understand. And what I found is that you take your gifts and you bless other people with those gifts. Again, the podcast, my business, you'll get rewarded monetary. Most of the time it's monetary at first. I get a lot of reward and satisfaction. I had a lady yesterday on the coaching program that we're at. We charge $1,000 for this coaching program. She goes, I think what you just told me in the last 3 minutes triples the price that I had to pay for this coaching program. And so you have these gifts and you use these gifts to bless other people. And then you get rewarded monetarily. So once I got money and I still had the same gifts, I was able to pour more fuel on the fire, hire a full-time social media team, hire employees, hire people, and I can expand the gifts that I have, bless a multitude of more people. And I said earlier, how do you scale and build stuff at no incremental cost to you? So the more that I spend on ads and the more that I spend on social media and stuff, I can amplify that message, gift that I have to the world. And that's when I see, like I said, God gives you these gifts, but the gifts and skills are not the same. Let's be clear. But then you use those gifts and you use the skill that you learn and acquire and that discipline to bless other people. And you're going to get rewarded, not only monetarily, but you're going to get rewarded like from a self-realization perspective. And it's just going to keep going.
Do you have any, I guess, like any disciplines or specific actions that you take in your life to help you in your Christian journey, whether it's you set aside time for Bible studies or prayers or meditations or things of that nature? Do you have anything that you do specifically that you find really helpful, or do you have any tips for our audience that may be maybe newer in their Christian journey on how to help bolster themselves?
Yeah, it has to definitely be like surrounding yourself with other believers too. Like I said, a lot of people don't meet God or got into rock bottom. You don't want to do your best to not have to reach rock bottom. You want to have God reach you where you're at and bring you up. Because that's the thing is you don't have to climb up to God. He'll meet you where you're at and bring you. But admittedly, I don't have any routines that I do on a daily basis. I think it's a little bit before night when unfortunately, like my brain's trying to unwind and go to sleep, but it's just like rapid fire thinking different things. Sometimes my mind will shift to Christianity.
Yeah. For me, it's something that like when I switched my schedule to doing my whole morning routine a few years ago, I went from my morning routine used to be wake up as late as I possibly could, grab something quick to eat, maybe eat it on the road and get to work and live in a hectic world. And then I think it was the book Miracle Morning that kind of started that. And my youngest was born and that type of thing. And I switched my schedule to the morning and started implementing some different things and trying things out. So like one of the things that I do is first thing I get up, brush my teeth, whatever. And then in the shower, I put on like a Bible study podcast. That's like usually about 20 minutes or so. And so I do that. I practice like breathing exercises and meditation during that Bible study. That's something relatively simple that I do that I enjoy. It helps me try to clear my mind and get it set for the day. I will say it's even after a few years, it's still very difficult to get my mind to focus. It starts wandering all over the place. So that takes a lot of effort. But that's just one thing that I try to do. And one other thing that we talked about, I think previously, Wes, we talked about on another interview was when it comes to tithing and charity and that type of thing is setting it up. Two things. One, setting it up early before or maybe you're already successful. Great. If you're not setting it up before when you're not making as much, because get that discipline and that practice so that, if and when you do become successful, you continue that practice and that discipline. Because let's just be frank, it is different, right? To set aside a certain amount of money, especially when that dollar or that number becomes bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
So,
it says if you're not faithful with little, you won't be with much. So
Right.
it's easier to start it when you have little means. To say, I'll wait until you give me X number of dollars, God, to start blessing others.
Keep moving.
You keep moving the goalposts 100%. You'll well, I just need a little bit more. I need to buy one more property. I need to do this. If I just get one more business.
Yeah, 100%. And there's been times in my life too, where even though I didn't necessarily it wasn't going to break my bank if it didn't come back to me, but where I had given something and miraculously I get almost that same exact amount back. It's happened a few times in my life, which is, I find it very interesting. To me, I look at, okay, yes, it wasn't breaking my bank if I didn't get it back, but for me, it was validation that, hey, keep doing this. So that's how I look at that and a couple things just that I do in my life. What about you, Wes?
I would say for me, the biggest change I made in my life is a few years ago. I used to read the Bible sporadically. Usually I would read it at night before going to bed, and I would usually read about 3 verses and then I'd fall asleep. So then I switched to doing the audio Bible, but then I'd get 10 seconds and fall asleep. So I realized quickly that I was giving the best part of my day towards my business, and the leftovers would go to God. And when that conviction hit, I was like, okay, I'm done with that. So I now get up 20 minutes before the kids do, because I take them to school in the morning. So I get up around 5:40 and I come downstairs, make coffee, and I sit down and I start reading the Bible. I just start reading, and I may not read more than a chapter. I may read 3 chapters, whatever. And I just read a little bit and meditate on it. And then I will say a quick prayer. I'll just thank the Lord that there were no break-ins last night, no fires in my house. Nobody had a heart attack in their sleep. Keep me safe as I travel throughout the day. Keep my wife safe. Bring us back. No traffic accidents. Just basic stuff. Thanks for the food I ate and the clothes I'm wearing. And then I start my day. And I've noticed that when I started doing that, and I'm not bragging at all, but if I don't do it, it bothers me. It just bothers me. If my kids wake me up early for something and I got to take care of throw up, and then I got to clean sheets, the next thing I know, the day started, I didn't do it, I feel like I'm missing something. And so for me, that's been a game changer, because like you guys mentioned in the previous 2 sections, it's all about discipline. You put discipline towards things that you put priorities towards, and to have discipline in a few things in life and not in others, like you were saying, Ryan, at the beginning, is you're neglecting things. You got to do all at the same time. You can't pick and choose your winners based on what's convenient. And so I would recommend for anybody who listens to this podcast, give God the best part of your day. If that's the end of the day, great. If it's lunchtime, great. If it's first thing in the morning, great. But give him the best. It's very hypocritical to ask God for his best, to receive it, and then give God the leftovers. That's just a little much.
Yeah. And frankly, that's convicting. That's what a lot of us do. Goodness. Just as we're wrapping up here, one of the reasons that we started this podcast was to try to build a platform where people can, especially people who are successful, can talk about Christianity and God openly and get that out there. Because like we touched on earlier, it's become this taboo, unfortunately, in today's society and marketplace, where it's not okay to talk about that. But what I found in the real estate industry, and I'm sure you see the same thing, Ryan, is that most people in the real estate industry are successful. And the more you get to know them, frankly, a lot of those people are Christians too, which I think is an interesting thing. It's for a specific reason. And someone like yourself who has at least in that industry, who has a pretty sizable platform. Like we talked about earlier, you're very well known. You have your personal brand, you have your businesses, your coaching, your influencing all these people. God's put you in a position that gives you the ability to utilize that platform to really bring glory to his name. And that's what I encourage all of us to think about in wherever we've been placed. It's for a reason, so that at the end of the day, the reason we're all here is to bring God glory. So whatever we do, whoever we're around, whatever situation we're in, think, how can we use that to bring glory to God's name? I just encourage everyone, myself included, our audience, to think about that. How can you use whatever platform you have? You might not have 1 million followers or whatever on Instagram, like me, who does not have 1 million followers on Instagram. But whatever you can do, just start spreading the word, start being more open to speaking about it, because the unfortunates of being a taboo in today's world, we need to change that.
Yeah.
So with that, I think did you have something?
Let's move on to the closing questions. 100%.
Yeah. Just real quick, we'll just go with one of them here. You mentioned one of them earlier, which may be part of your answer, but Ryan, do you have three top books that you can think of that have had the biggest impact on your life?
Yeah, I would say the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, number 1. Actually, before that, I would just say the Bible. Number 1, the Bible. And number 2, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I really did enjoy The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a personal finance and investing type book. I guess some more like business ebooks are actually this one that I have in front of me is called, it's a really good book. It's called Launch. It basically tells you how to sell a product or a service and the fashion using email sequencing and marketing and products and stuff. That's a good one. And then there's also another business book called $100 Million Offers by Alex Ramosi.
Right.
Kind of similar fashion. Also, another one in there is the Book of Habit by Charles Duhigg. It talks when we have good habits, waking up early, lifting weights, we call habits. When it's alcohol, we call them, what do you call them? We call addictions. Exactly. So it's like understanding those habits. For example, smoking, you have the urge, the nicotine urge. You smoke the cigarette and then the reward is how your body feels. Well, the book talks about replacing that action and reward with 2 different things in order to solve your addiction. That was my books.
Awesome. Great. This is great. This is a really good interview. Tons of golden nuggets. Really appreciate you taking the time, Ryan, to go over all these things with us. And with that, we'll sign it off.
Awesome.
I'm Cale. He's the bearded man.
Wow.
And we're signing off. Join us next week for another episode, guys. Thank you.